Hello and welcome. Welcome to this podcast, number 2 of the Being Authentic series. So, just a little recap about last time. We introduced some very simple yet super deep truths. And some of them could take a lifetime to really explore. It might be easy for some of you, it might be new. Whatever the level, whatever the experience, wherever you are on this path, just know that the starting point is now. And that in itself, it is beautiful. There's no comparing. There's no efforting, no striving, no fighting, no condemning, not doing any of this. As we step on the path of inner discovery, we open up to the acceptance, the surrender, the love that is really the source of who we are. So, we all are a miracle of existence, wouldn't you think so? So what do you call it? Years and years ago, one sperm from your father entered the egg from your mother. That in itself is totally a miracle in biology. Ask any expert. The fact that this egg developed and actually gave birth to you is 1 in a gazillion. Nobody will ever know the odds, but the odds are so small. The odds are small that we're still alive after years and years of existence. We all know that life in itself is not guaranteed. You are still here, we are still here. And most of the time we don't even remember how amazing, how sacred, how miraculous this is, the existence, the miracle of being alive. So what do you call this great intelligence, this inner power, whatever it is that turned, directed, guided this sperm and the egg into developing into a baby with a high complex system of being able to grow into a human being? It's just incredible. What do you call it? Your mother had no idea what was happening. If you're a woman and you've had children, you know. We don't know anything. When we break a bone, we just know that the body's going to heal itself. What do you call that power which guides us, which nourishes us spiritually, emotionally, which gave us life in a way, or at least assisted us in becoming alive? What do you call that power? I call it the source, divine intelligence, God at times, but not affiliated to any religions. Not that I have anything against religions, but I'd rather be free from any dogma. What do you call it? And do you believe in it? And how often do you connect with that? Do you live with that sense of being guided? Do you live with it? Do you listen to it? It's absolutely majestic. It's beautiful. It is the harmony which we find in nature. It is the intelligence which turns a seed into a beautiful tree or a plant or a vegetable. It's the power which creates stars. It's in us. It is absolutely and totally in us. Our heart is powered by this energy because, as a matter of fact, our heart is an electrical machine just like our brain. And when we check our heart or our brain, we check for waves. That's a fact. That is basic science. Did you know that the heart is the first organ which is developed when we're in a fetal stage? And from the heart go all the information to create a baby in such a miraculous and perfect way. The heart is the most beautiful place to live from. And when we move from the brain to the heart, I'm not saying that the brain is bad, and again we're going to talk about this massively at length, but we have to select what comes first in terms of information. So the heart is such a beautiful place to live from. We have neurons in the gut as well. So the heart is very much connected to the gut. We all know the gut feeling. We all know that intuition, which I mentioned in the first podcast. Intuition, I believe, is what people are invited to develop in this new world, this new era, because we are going to realize that the world doesn't make sense anymore. Things are going to go, I think, that's my prediction, I might be wrong, things are going to go a little bit crazy. And basically you realize that whatever you look for, you find. And you'll find totally conflicting, opposing messages in this world, because that's the creativity, that's the beauty of this world. We can be anything we want. We can do anything we want, from the best to the worst. So we've got 2 points here. Intuition, that gut feeling, going within. As we said, within is where everything starts from. And the world is an extension of who we are. Obviously, some people are not going to agree with this, and we'll agree to disagree. That's fine. Remember the quote from Anais Nin, what we see in the world is not the way it is, it's who we are. That's so deep. Amazing. So intuition is going within, and it's trusting that inner feeling, which is definitely in the guts as well. Actually, did you know that we have about 2 million neurons in the gut, which is the equivalent of what a dog has in its brain? So there's a definite intelligence there. And so many times we've experienced the fact that we knew something went wrong, and we knew before it started. And we look back and we feel that sense of contraction and guilt and frustration because we didn't listen to our gut feeling. Going back into connecting with that intuition, really the best way is to start when everything is fine in our life. So practicing mindfulness, practicing breathing, which is really the first step into anything. And again, we'll talk about this, especially when we talk about managing stress. But the first thing to do before anything is to breathe. Let's breathe right now. Really deep belly breathing. And if you can, right now, drop your awareness into your heart and carry on breathing deeply and expand your awareness from your heart into this world, and allow these words to just go straight into your heart and accept them from there. But again, as I said last time, our intuition is important because we, from there, have the choice to see if whatever comes our way resonates with us. And it's very important in this time of massive, overwhelming information, because some truth will resonate with you and some won't. And some of my truth might not resonate with you. And it doesn't mean that mine is wrong or yours is wrong. It just means that we are on a slightly different path. And that's absolutely fine. We can still learn from each other. Because really, I really believe that the way we're going to unite in these next few years is understanding that our magnificence is in our diversity. We are unique, we are special, and yet we're all of the same family, the human family. So let's learn to open up, to just be with each other and honor and celebrate our differences. Because through our differences, we can gain, we can feel strong, we can feel connected, and we can celebrate our uniqueness in unity. Beautiful. So intuition is important. Understanding that we all have a truth, which is the right one for us, where we are at this moment, in this now moment. Whatever you believe is absolutely what you're meant to believe. You are at the right place. You're exactly having the life you're meant to have. That's again a big one, a massive one, which will develop with everything I'm going to introduce and present to you. Whether you accept it or it doesn't resonate with you, that's absolutely up to you. And breathing, allowing yourself to expand and be more guided and live and experience life from the heart, really, that's a beautiful start. Breathing is the one common denominator which is going to allow you to really upregulate the hormones of relaxation. Now, that inner power, how can you use it more? How can you connect with it? Do you need to do anything in order to have it? No. We all have this inner power because it is the invisible from which we all stem from. The invisible is as important as the visible. Actually, it's more important. A lot of people will say, oh, I don't believe in energy. And that's fine. I totally respect that paradigm. But it's really funny to start talking with people like this and ask them the question, so do you know what the universe is made of? Well, I would encourage you to go to the NASA website and just check, because that's what I did one Friday evening. I was just, I've got all these questions, always questions in my mind, and I checked on the internet, and what came up is that NASA pie chart. What is the universe made of? Guess what? In percentage again, how much matter is in the universe? If you don't know, you're going to be surprised. If you know, you know, obviously. Around 4%, only 4% or 4.6% is actual atoms. The quantum physicists keep saying that we could put all the atoms of the universe into the size of a pea, which is totally crazy. Every atom in our body, they're very far apart when you go into the subatomic level. There's energy everywhere. Everything is energy. Everything is information. This world is a vibrational world. And this is the world I live in. I understand it's not the majority, but it's amazing to see the world from that angle. And again, that's something else we're going to explore. The levels of consciousness. I love the idea of expanding and ascending our levels of consciousness. I really believe that we don't need laws when we have people who have a higher level of consciousness, who have integrity, who have honor, who have respect, who have love, empathy, compassion. And they don't need to be told what is right or what is wrong in terms of others. They know. And I really believe that this is the way to evolve. So we'll be talking about the levels of consciousness. What is consciousness for a start? Consciousness, the state of being aware of and responsive to one's surroundings. Being aware of. And that awareness is so important. That awareness is what I call freedom. Because with awareness comes a world of infinite potentiality and mostly the idea of choice, which is exactly what we're going to be talking about with the work of Sonia Lyubormisky. So in podcast number 1, I ended with this explanation of the pie chart that I found from the work of Sonia Lyubormisky and her research into happiness all over the world. She researched what made people happy. A few common denominators is the capacity that the people have to feel positive emotions like compassion, like gratitude and love. These people agree that this inner power is in them. They recognize it, they acknowledge it. And they have a very specific relationship with circumstances, which is the question I asked at the end of the last podcast. How much do you think circumstances affect happy people? And as well, how much they affect you? Your circumstances affect you. So, would you say 50%, 40%, 10%? And I've asked this question many times. And everybody initially, especially out of the context of a talk or a class, would say, well, they affect me massively. My life is determined by my circumstances. That's the first answer. And then when you start to explain a few things and, okay, are you sure about this? Then people start thinking, and if it's in the context of a class, obviously their perception is altered slightly, and they'll start saying, well, okay, you're giving me 50%, 40% or 10%, so already this is a bit of a surprise. And a lot of people will say 50%. Well, 50% according to Sonia's work, and obviously she explains that it's the research of a survey, which is an average, and nobody is an average ever. So these numbers will vary from person to person, but there's a trend in her research. 50% is what she determines as the genetics, and mostly she calls it as well the baseline. From what I understand, she means the sum of everything we've gone through in terms of our upbringing, our experiences, the conclusions we've made about ourselves, about the world, probably the traumas we've gone through. All of these filters, our gender, our culture, our level of education, all our hang-ups, everything, our limitations, really everything. So that's really the basics. And again, it's interesting to talk about epigenetic. We'll talk about epigenetics later on, to see that even genes are not set in stone. So you've got to be careful as to the definition of genetics, not necessarily set in stones, but that's for later. So the second one is 40%. 40% is not our circumstances. It is what we do with them. It is how we react to them. In itself, a circumstance is neutral. I know some people are going to be very shocked by this. But if we look at the COVID-19, the lockdown we experienced, we have the example of so many people in the same situation, rather safe, with enough food to eat, with a roof on their head, comfortable enough. I'm not talking about the ones going through tragedy, extreme tragedies, extreme trauma, extreme circumstances, abuse or whatever, because that's a different story. But within the same circumstances, for some people that COVID-19 was excruciating, painful. For some it was a breeze. It was an opportunity to enjoy life, to slow down, to rest, to be creative, to connect with family, to connect with friends through the internet, through different medium. So why? Well, it's just because in reality our circumstances have no emotional meaning in themselves. That's what I mean when I say neutral. And I'm not saying that something extremely tragic is neutral and shouldn't be considered as something tragic. That's not what I'm saying either. But talking about the majority of our daily circumstances, they're pretty neutral. The COVID in itself, and that's a very interesting thing that I heard from a channeler, saying that the virus is invisible. Right, this virus is invisible, yet it's united the whole planet. Isn't that amazing though, if you think about it? Yes, I know some people have died from it, and I am in no way minimizing their deaths, but we can all agree that there's very, very little which has the capacity to unite the whole planet, and it is much more benevolent than a war or a common enemy where there's a big divide. Here we have a virus. So in itself, hopefully, we are going to gain in wisdom from all of this, because whenever a circumstance, and a challenging one, happens, we have the opportunity to answer two questions which are very, very important. Before I say them, I want to add that it's okay to go into the emotional reaction. I'm not saying it's not okay. It's how long we stay in there that is interesting. And that is the difference between the people who navigate a crisis with a certain ease and others who don't. The two questions which are really, really important when we face any crisis, whether personal or global, and which will determine how we deal with our circumstances, are: how can I navigate this crisis so that it serves me for my highest good? And two, who do I want to be when I emerge from this crisis? Or who do I want to become in the midst of this crisis. Believe me, I'm not saying it's easy, because we've all gone through crisis. And I understand that for some people this COVID-19 has been very challenging, and still is even after we're out of the lockdown, because it's been a slowdown. We've been in a way forced to look within, since the enemy, some people would call it, I do not like to use that terminology of war, because interestingly enough, what a lot of people don't understand is that when we stand against something, when we fight against something, when we have a position against something, we reinforce it. And that's understandable from a point of view of energy. If everything is energy, and we know everything is energy, that's been scientifically proved, then we are an organic piece of machinery which emanates an energetic frequency. Every time you stand against something, you feel the energy of that something. Therefore, we reinforce it. We do the very thing we don't want to do. Again, that's something we'll develop later. So the main thing here is to remember to allow yourself to navigate a crisis. Let go of control. Let things be if you cannot control them, if you can't let them go. And expand in this awareness, that state of awareness of becoming conscious, and become the observer. The parable of the second arrow is a well-known Buddha story dealing with suffering more skillfully. It is said that the Buddha asked a student, if a person is struck by an arrow, is it painful? He went on to explain, in life we can't always control the first arrow. The first arrow is the pain of being struck, metaphorically. The second arrow is our reaction to the first one. This one is optional, but this one undoubtedly creates suffering. It is the reaction in terms of emotional plotting to revenge, to control, to change, to fight, to condemn, to compare, or these emotions of guilt and shame and grief and despair, which repeat on and on and on again. So sometimes we shoot it at somebody else when we have somebody we can blame, whether it's a person, an event, a story even. But for other people, it's that internal, incessant repetition of the story, of the emotion, which will repeat on and on and on again. That's the second arrow. And that one creates suffering. And sometimes that's all we can do until we become aware. And that's fine. It's painful. That's absolutely fine. When we talk about the path of mastery, as I mentioned in a previous podcast, a lot of people are expecting a path of happiness and lightness and ultimate joy and easiness. There's definitely some of that. But you can imagine that it is called the road less traveled for a reason. It takes a lot of courage to face one's inner demons, one's limitations, to come face to face with the suffering, to come face to face with the traumas, to bring to our awareness of these things that we've tried to suppress unconsciously. A lot of people are not ready because we naturally are designed to run away from pain and look for pleasure. And we can see it in our society when we have the tools to understand that we don't have to live within the suffering. We don't have to live within the pain, but we can just explore from the point of view of the observer. Then it changes everything. And that's why, with the research of Sonia Lyubormisky, happy people tend to be affected by their circumstances by only 10%, because they understand the second arrow, because they have that capacity to be resilient, they have the capacity to bounce back. They naturally choose not to stay long or at all in the victim mode. They rise. They know that in order to grow, you have to make mistakes, you have to take risks. They feel comfortable with failing. They feel comfortable with exploring their emotions. They're very emotionally mature. They just have that natural propensity for enjoying life. And that's something which took me a long time within the writing of my book, which was partly channeled in automatic writing. When I spoke to my inner wisdom, well, she started right from the beginning saying there's nothing to fix, nothing to change. And that's not comfortable at all. And then I'm saying she, it could be a he, but I choose she would forever repeat that I had to enjoy life and attain the highest potential in this lifetime. That's the only goal. Enjoy the process. Enjoy every bit of it. The good, the bad, the ugly. The painful and the beautiful. The tragic and the magic. The horrible and the amazing. The challenging and the easy. Everything. Don't get attached. Flow through. Learn to navigate without fighting, without even trying to change anybody or anything. And initially, I couldn't understand. For me, it was living from denial. It was not a state that I considered advanced. It was very funny because I had these discussion with that inner wisdom where, as I said in a previous podcast, I was arguing. But when you argue with reality, you always lose. Reality is reality. And now I understand. It's only when we are fully aware that the goal, the ultimate goal for all of us on this planet is to shine our light, to develop our potential, and to live that life that we desire and find what we love, what we enjoy, and make it happen. And then we can walk the talk naturally without having to even try to convince anybody. We can agree, we can disagree, we can be in a room with somebody who's going through tragedy and be in our state of awareness where what comes from us is love, pure love, compassion, not trying to change that person, not trying to fix, because if we want to fix, we assume that there's something wrong with it. You see, it took me a long time to get there. And my inner wisdom had to repeat to me. And actually I had to go through many stories, many experiences to get it. Nothing to fix apart from yourself. You don't even have to fix yourself. And I will finish with this. The example that I was given at the end of the book was, if you have a radio and it's playing pop music and you want to listen to classical music, you can change all the bits of that radio until it's actually brand new. Everything has been changed. It's never going to change the music. You only have to change the vibration, the channel, the wave, the frequency. That's what we need to do. I know it's so simple on paper, yet challenging at times, and we can just finish on this. Have a beautiful, beautiful time, and remember that to start practicing, you can remind yourself of the questions. Whenever you're challenged with something, how can I navigate this in a way which is going to serve my highest good? How do I want to emerge from this experience? And as much as you can, when things are flowing, develop your intuition, your connection. It's difficult to start when things are not going right, when we've lost our capacity to think rationally. It's much better to develop all these tools when things are okay. And we have the time, we can slow down, trusting your intuition, become the observer of your life, and start, and this is a lot, I know, and start watching your reactions. Don't suppress them, don't judge them, love them. Even if it's not who you want to be, it doesn't matter. Love them. This is the first step. Loving who we are. In the best of who we are and in the worst of who we are. Because when we do that, we can see it in the world and we can see it in other people. We can love them for who they are, for their best and for their worst. I will talk to you soon. Beautiful spiritual being having a human experience. Sending you vibes of love and light. Namaste.